Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this second session on our customer day today. And today we're going to be talking about Power Automate. So Power Automate used to be called Flow, workflow automation in the cloud. So first of all, just want to make sure that everybody can hear. And if they can't, that you can feel free to put a message in the chat. We have Saul on the call who will be assisting and dealing with any kind of technical issues that we may have. If everything's clear, so just make sure that you can see. If during the presentation, if you're all saying we can't see it, please, and we need to make the resolution a bit bigger, whatever, just drop messages please in the chat, and again Saul will jump in and let us know. The session's up to 45 minutes, so probably won't be too far off that. There'll be kind of 5 minutes or so at the end for questions as well. So let's move on. So we have today myself, Matt, and Kelly, who will be going through Power Automate. We decided to try and keep this fairly hands-on, so there won't be too much PowerPoint. We'll jump fairly early on into the product, just so you can see what it's about and kind of get an understanding of its capabilities, at least some of its capabilities. So what we'll do is a quick overview of what Power Automate is. We'll then jump into the product, talk about, show an example of one that I say we've built, that Kelly has built. So Kelly's very much the technical side of things here, and then we'll actually go in and build one, and that will look at a few different elements of systems in terms of data and technologies, but also hooking up into BC as well, and then some Q&A at the end. So first thing is, what is Power Automate? So it's as it says there, a cloud-based workflow tool. So it lives on Microsoft's Azure platform. In Office 365, you might see a link there to Power Automate. And one of its strengths really is that it's got hundreds of connectors. So when you're doing a piece of workflow, you can say, if something's happened in this system, go and do something else in this system, and then maybe something in a different system, do some calculations, and then go back to the first system and send back a message. So it's dealing with, it's kind of an orchestration between lots of different systems, and it's an ever-growing list of connectors that are there as well. There's generally no coding required, so it's very much formula-based, logic-based. So if you're an Excel power user, you'd probably get on quite well with this. And its basic principles is it's based upon triggers and actions. So when something happens, go and do something. That's kind of the fundamental of a kind of building blocks of workflow. And if you've been on the Power App session or haven't yet and are going to go on one today, it can be part of the logic that sits behind a Power App as well. So you can use the Power App for capturing information and doing some level of functionality, but you can then push off some of that capability to Power Automate to go and drive some more complex logic and integrations to one of the connectors. So when I said there's lots of connectors, this is just a sample. That's about a third of them, I reckon. I kind of scraped 2 or 3 screens from Microsoft's list of what's available there. There's some really useful ones in there. Even the basic Microsoft ones, things like Office and Outlook. So I can, when an email arrives, I can send emails. So I've got full functionality to deal with stuff in Outlook, be it mail or calendars. Excel, I can create a spreadsheet, I can read a spreadsheet, I can go and pick up cell 3A from a spreadsheet and do something with that data. SharePoint, OneDrive, I can create files. Then some of the more external systems, even things like FTP. So if at the moment, if you want to do some form of messaging between another system. If a file's been dropped somewhere in a folder, you can go and pick that up through FTP, or even there's one a file drive, in the system kind of folder. So if you use the gateway connector from Microsoft, you can say, when a file appears in this folder, and it doesn't have to be an FTP folder. So a lot of capability. You can also call through HTTP links, other APIs. So you can go and call a whole host of things out there, whether you name it. If you want to go and communicate to something out there, the chances are you'll be able to do it. So we're going to crack on and talk about a demo. And I'll introduce Kelly. So say hello. Might need to take yourself off mute.
Do indeed. Thanks, Matt. Okay, so we're going to run through a quick demo with you today. So as you can see, we've got the CRM screen open. So we're going to be starting in CRM, and then we're going to use something called Customer Voice. You may or may not have heard of this before, but what Customer Voice does is it's the new version of Forms Pro, basically. So that integrates quite nicely into both CRM, Dataverse, and Flow itself. And then we're going to send some data over to Business Central. So should we crack on with that? So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a CRM opportunity. So first things first, I'm going to create a brand new opportunity. So we'll call it Customer Day Session 2, because that's where we are. So what I'm going to do is we'll create the account first, actually. I'm going to create a new account from here in the screen. So we'll call this CD Session 2 as well. Okay. That's all the information that we need with that one so far. So that's then going to add that to my opportunity, and then I'm going to create a contact, again, specifically for this session.
And an account in CRM is either a Business Central customer or supplier, or it's not as specific as Business Central as it is. It's a business realistically.
Yes. So an account from a CRM point of view covers a broad range of things. So it's more of a parent holding record for a contact. So it can be any form of company that you deal with, really, in whatever regard that is. So what did we call this? Okay, so we've got our opportunity there. So we'll just give that a save. And then we've added a button down here, which, sorry, bear with it runs a little bit slower when we're sharing it on Teams. We've added this send new account form button here. So we're just going to tick that, and then we're going to save that. So what that's going to do is it's going to go to Customer Voice, it's going to find the survey, and it's going to send a link out to the contact. Okay, so this is what the survey form looks like. So it's just got some basic information. Obviously, you can add more and more fields to this if required, but we've kept it very simple for now. So if we go to our flow here, we can see that it's running there. So then if we go back to our opportunity any minute now, we will actually see that survey come through.
So you've got a flow in the background listening for something that you've just done, isn't it?
Yeah, so if we show you briefly what this flow is actually doing while it's running. So what it's doing is it's looking for an opportunity when it's added or modified, because you need both of those. And it's actually monitoring just 2 fields on the opportunity form. So it's only monitoring that send new account form and the parent contact ID form. And then it's only checking for rows where that send new account form is equal to true. And then it's getting the contact and it's sending the form to the email address from the contact. Okay, so if we go back here, in fact, I've got a nasty feeling this is going to fail, because what I forgot to do, which is a rookie mistake, joys of demoing live, is I forgot to actually put an email address in the contact. So bear with me one moment.
You can go through and if you need to add that. So the Power Automate that we got created in the background to the initial sending of the email is just 3 steps. It's listening to a change, so it's looking for a trigger. It's capturing some information about that record that's been changed, and then it's sending an email with some information off that record, i.e. using the email address and sending the form to the customer. So it's just 3 steps.
Yep, 3 steps, 3 simple steps. That's all we need. See, so yeah, there it failed there because I didn't put the email address in. So we'll give that a second to run again. So after that's come through, we're going to fill in that form, and then we're going to go into another flow. So if I show you that while we're waiting for the background flow to run. So what this is going to do, this flow that we've built here, go into edit. So this is going to check again. So this is going to check when we receive a customer voice survey response. Okay, so then what we're doing here, it looks like a lot of steps, but they're all very simple, easy to use steps. So what we're doing is we're using an action called initialize variables. So what we want to do is we want to store various pieces of information as they come through from that form so that we can use them later when we send the information to Business Central.
So it's just a little store, really, isn't it, for some fields, so that later in the flow, if we want to do something with one of those fields, we've got it available with a name that we've given it.
Yeah, absolutely. So then what we're going to do here, we're using what's called a list rows action. So what that does is that goes and that searches Dataverse for rows that match the query you define. So you can use a couple of different ways of querying the data here. So you can use filter rows using a no data query filter, or you can also use fetch XML. So what you can actually do in the scope of CRM and Dataverse is you can actually use the advanced find function to go and create that fetch XML for you, which makes it a lot simpler. I like using no data queries, but other people like using the fetch XML. It's down to personal preference, really.
And what I would say is that that's fairly technical, that bit. It does, for some of the stuff that you do, though, well, a lot of the stuff you do, you don't have to get that, you don't have to get that technical. You can literally say, go and get this field and put it somewhere else, and
yes,
which we'll come on to when we kind of create a new one from scratch.
Yeah. So then what we're going to do is we're going to use a switch action. So what the switch action is going to do is it's going to take all of these responses that we've got here, and it's going to see which question they belong to. So again, this can be relatively technical when you first start using Flow, but once you get used to doing it, it's quite self-explanatory. So what I've done is I've actually done this with the hard-coded GUID of what the question is, because I know what that is. And if you can hard-code the GUID, it's easier to do that. But you can use any field from within the response. So you could have used the name or anything like that. And then what we're doing is we're setting the variables that we initiated earlier based on.
So we've read the record, which is the form response. Somebody's filled in those little boxes we created in that nice survey form. And in effect, what we're doing here is saying, well, whatever's filled in, go and set those variables, those placeholders, so we can then use them elsewhere within the flow.
Absolutely, yeah. So then what we're going to do is we're going to start and wait for an approval. Okay, so what the approval will do is that we'll send an email to the person designated. Now, again, I've hard-coded the email address to come to me, but this can be based on dynamic content. So it can be based on, the owner of an account or any criteria that you set, really.
And the approval function is a standard functionality within Power Automate. So you can say, I want to use this kind of little app within Power Automate. Even Business Central can use approvals now. And what it does do is, when it's sending an approval to somebody via an email, it allows things like lazy approval, where you can get, you look at the email and there's a button that says approve or reject. And if you reject, you can put some comments, ideal for doing on your phone. And that's all held within Power Automate, that approval process. So it can be for anything, it doesn't have to be of an invoice or something like that. You can use it for absolutely anything.
Yeah, it can be used for anything that you want to approve. You can also as well, so we've got approve and reject here, but you can also specify custom responses. So if it's not necessarily just an approve or reject, but you want to send it to somebody to make a decision about where something needs to go, or the category that something needs to fall into, you can do that as well. So it's not just about approving and rejecting records.
So it could go to finance first of all, and they say, okay, how are you going to code this? They then code it within the response, and then that then decides where the approval is going to go.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's see if this is finished running now, and we'll leave that there. Right, there we go, work this time. And so if we go to the survey response, I'm just going to see if I can get to the link through here. So waiting for the email to come through. So we just click on this and then it opens up. So this is a specific URL that's linked just to me and this opportunity for us to fill things in. So I'm going to change the company name slightly. And then company number, we can put anything in there. The VAT number needs to be in a specific format because Business Central has data validation rules. Oh, missed out the 8. So we need a certain number of characters to be able to put that into Business Central. And then we click next, and then we put in some more details. So certain fields you do have to use genuine information. So like this email address, if I hadn't included the @ and a domain name, it would have failed validation and would have prompted me to redo that. And then for address line 1, we'll just go with 1. So I haven't put address line 2 or the town or the county as required, but the postcode is. So, and then we'll submit that. So what that's going to do now is if we go into, oh no, I was on the wrong flow, we apologise. If we go back into the main thing on the flow now, so that's going to submit my response. So as you can see, it's already running. So this is running through the steps that we've already discussed. So it's picked up that the survey responses come in. It's initialized all of our variables. It doesn't do anything else with those at that moment. It just initializes them so they're ready to use. It's got our list of responses.
And what that's one of the other lovely things as well is there you can actually see live where each flow run is. And you can also see what data has been passed through as well. So especially when you're building it and if you're trying to kind of fault find it, you can kind of track it through at each stage, see what data is being captured, what information's been sent, and just kind of see if there's we'll just use it to help diagnose it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's brilliant for when you're building flows because the error messages that you get are really quite descriptive. And they do tell you pretty much where you've gone wrong if you've tried to use the wrong type of variable or things like that. And also it does do some validation as well when you're actually saving the flow. So if you've put information in there that's incorrect or you've put the wrong field name or things like that in there, then it will prompt you to correct those mistakes as you're going through. It is very, very good at the troubleshooting.
And I can see at the moment it's sat there with the orange little circle at start and wait for an approval. So I'm guessing it's waiting for an approval.
It is indeed. So so what it's done is it's come through our switch. So the first response was the company name. So it set the company name as what we set it. And what it's going to do is you can see here we've got the for each declaration. So that applied to each is going to, let's get back to here. It's going to switch through, all of the records. So records 1 through to 7. It goes through all of them and it sets the variables based on what they were and based on what the switch values were. So the other interesting thing about a switch is you've actually got this default classification at the end. So if it doesn't match any of the values within your switch, it will go through this default thing. So you can have a default action. So say, for example, you want to set a field to a certain value. If it doesn't match the criteria of anything else, you can use the default switch value to do that. So it's a very useful thing there. So yeah, so as Matt pointed out, the approval now has started and it's waiting for me to go and approve it. So we've got a couple of ways we can do this. Can go into flow and my action items, and that's the one there. It's nice when things work and you're doing live demos, or it will also email as well. So you could just, be sat in Outlook and you can approve it directly from Outlook. So I'm just going to go straight into the record here for now. So you can submit your response. So it just says choose your response. So you can approve it, you can reject it, or you can reassign it to somebody else if you think it's not relevant to you and somebody else needs to do that. So we're just going to approve it. Click confirm. As you can see there, you can add comments as well, and you can output those comments that are put in the approval within the flow. So if we then go back to our flow here, So as you can see now, that's received the response. So it's telling me who the approver was, what the response was, when. So again, you can timestamp all of these dates and, you know, people, so you can track who's approved things, all of that kind of thing. And then it's come down here to condition. So the condition was simply, what was the outcome of the approval? Was it accepted or was it rejected? Sorry, was it approved or was it rejected? So then what it's done based on the approval or the rejection is it's got a couple more actions. So this has gone down the create customer in Business Central route. So if we switch to Business Central and we press F5, there you go. You can see we've now got our CD sessions 2 customer there. And then what it's also doing is it's getting the opportunity record so that it can get the account value from that opportunity. And then it's updating the account with some information. So for the demo that we're going to do in a little while, we've stamped it with the BC GUID. So we know the GUID of the BC account that we're going to be using, but you can also use the account number. So we have stamped both.
Yeah, so GUIDs have been around in CRM for a long, long time.
Yeah.
For Business Central, in effect, where you used to have customer 1, 2, 3, you've still got that now, but underlying that record, it actually holds a reference, which you can see there, like the GUID, this big kind of number that's very much unique. And that's what you know, a lot of the processes in the background are using. So sometimes you do have to refer to that GUID, but you know, it's typically a case of going and getting it. It tells you what it is, and then you just pass that to something else, saying go and get that record. But a lot of the BC connections through the APIs use just the account number, so you know it can be user friendly as well.
Yeah, so yeah, in CRM world, we love a good GUID, but there are other options as well. So that's then it's given us some outputs. I don't think I showed you on the Business Central one, actually, no, I didn't. So the Business Central connector has taken all of that information that we've put in there, and that's also given us the outputs. So as you can see, it's output the ID, which we've used to stamp the GUID, it's output the customer number, and it's output all of the fields that it's set. If we'd set other fields, or you've got, you know, default templates and things like that, it also outputs all of those. So basically it outputs all of the information that is created in that record in Business Central for us to use later in the flow.
So when you're creating records in BC through its connector, what you can do in Business Central is that there's a thing called API setup, and you can say, you know, for the customer record, and you can put some filters. You can say, I want to use this template. So you might only fill in, you know, name, address, and something that helps it understand what type of template it should use, and then the template can fill in, you know, your posting groups and all the kind of financial stuff that you need, but you don't need to then worry about that in your flow.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's automation at its best, isn't it? Not having to fill in loads of information. So then it's also getting the contact, and it's creating a phone call, which is relevant for our next demo. It's creating a phone call for a member of the team to go and call that customer after that account form has come back. So what we're going to do now is, if we go back to the opportunity and the contact. So you'll see now there's a phone call here to call the contact, the called CD session. Sounds weird now that I'm reading it out loud, about membership. So what we're going to do first is we're actually going to build a flow for you where we're going to take the membership record that we've created. So if I show you what that looks like. So this is the membership record. It's going to take this membership record and it's going to create an invoice in BC. So if we go and do that first.
And at the moment, we don't have that flow, do we?
No.
That's what we're going to create. We're going to take, so that the new account that's gone through, done the survey form, come back, created the account in CRM, created the customer in BC, linked the two together using that GUID. So that's all set up now, ready for further kind of integrations if we need it. But now we're saying, okay, we're some sort of subscription business, and we want to kind of set up a year's membership, and therefore we're going to want to send an invoice out to the customer.
Yeah. So first we're going to do an automated cloud flow. So we'll just call it CD session 2. It seems to be the name of the day. And then what we're going to do is choose a trigger. So for the Dataverse trigger, it's when a record is added, modified, or completed, deleted.
So the list below, that's listing lots of different triggers based upon all those hundreds of different connections that are available within Power Automate.
Yeah.
And Dataverse is the kind of the database that you can use within the Power Platform for creating your own kind of store of information.
It is, yeah. So Power Platform and Dataverse don't have to only be used in a CRM regard. You can use them if you just need to store data for other things as well. So you have a list of options on the Dataverse connector for when a row is added, modified, or deleted. So we're just going to pick added because we're only concerned when the record's first created, and then we're just going to search for our table, which helps if you spell it correctly. So there we go, it's memberships. So these give you the nice friendly display names of the table. You don't have to know the underlying name of the table. And then the scope for this is organisation, because we want it to happen whenever this record is completed. So there are further filters you can put on there, but we're not concerned with those at this point in time because we want it to read everything.
But that's enough to kick off the flow, just that one step, basically saying, okay, we're monitoring Dataverse, so our kind of cloud database. We want to say when a record gets added to the membership table, we want to go and do something. And that's all we've done in that first section, is just kind of allowed it to kick off and say, right, let's go do something.
Yeah, absolutely. So then what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to go and get the account. So we're going to get a row by ID. Again, love good GUID in CRM. So the table name we want here is account. So what we're going to do is we're then going to specify which row we want. So what we're going to do is use the account value from our trigger.
So what you're doing is linking two steps together. So the first step said, okay, a row's been added, and it knows the ID of that because it's just been created. So it's passing that ID basically to your second bit, which is now getting all the information about that record.
Yep, so that's pulling all of the information back from our account then, so we can use that information dynamically as well.
Yep. Because the membership's got an account number against it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So we're then going to go and create an invoice. So let me request control. So we can do this collaboratively now. So you can see my little face over my mouse. So we want to connect to Business Central. So search for Business Central, and there I can see two connectors, cloud and on-premise. The cloud has a lot more capabilities, by the way. So you can see you've got triggers and actions. So it knows that this is an action because it's not the first step in the process. And this is the standard Business Central API that's saying, you know, what is it that I want to do? So create records, delete records, execute an action, get records, update them. And that's kind of it, really. So it's kind of creation, update, modify, you know, the usual kind of data steps. But execute is also a useful one, which we'll come on to. The first thing I'm going to do then is create a record. So a bit like we saw before, we then start to choose some information. So it knows it's my production environment because that's the only one I've got. It then shows me the companies. So I'm doing this in my Cronus company. API category looks a lot once you get used to this in BC. The only one you're really going to use is V2. However, in that list, it can also show any custom APIs that we create for you. So if you want to expose some data that isn't there as standard as part of the APIs, we create a page, push that app into your system, and then you'll be able to see it on the list there. And then finally, the table name. So this is the standard tables within BC. So customers, dimensions, items, sales, purchase documents, mainly. So if I go down and look for sales invoices, there you go. And I've selected that, give it a couple of seconds, and boom, it opens up in effect all the fields that are available in the API. Now, the way that Microsoft exposed the APIs is that some of the naming's a bit generic. You know, you'll recognize most of these names, but they're not exactly like the way you'll see the names in BC. And that's because typically the people that are going to be writing into these things might be like web developers, and so they won't necessarily understand the terminology. So Microsoft have tried to make this a little bit more generic. So we don't need to put an invoice number because it's going to work that out for us. External document number, we had a reference, didn't we, Kelly? I think on the membership. What was it called again? Reference, there you go. This one here. So that's the reference number from the membership form that we created. I'll leave the date so that they put in today's date. Customer ID is going to be, was it customer or BC? BC GUID. Okay, so that was the reason why we wrote that into the account earlier, so we can reference it there. I can use the customer number instead, and it will use that or the other. I don't need to fill in all the customer name and details because it's going to pull all that in BC. So I think when you're creating an invoice in BC, how would you do it? You know, I've chosen the number, I've put a customer reference number, and in terms of the invoice header, I think that's probably about it for now. It's what we need, and I'll save that. So that will go and create, in effect, an invoice header, but I also need a line. So if obviously the membership had multi-records, we could do that kind of that step thing that we did earlier where we loop through all the lines, but I've just got one line. So click on next step. And back it, searching for the Business Central connector. And this time create record again. And again, it knows it's production because that's in the environment. Choose my company, B2. And then here, I'm going to go down to my sales invoice lines. Then it'll wait a bit and it kind of shows all the fields. So all I'm going to put is, so the document ID in effect is going to be the ID from the first step. So in effect, that's the kind of invoice reference number. I haven't got an item. The line type is going to be account, and this is where things are a little bit different. So normally you on an invoice line, you type GL account, but Microsoft have just named it account to make it a bit more friendly for those non kind of Business Central people. And then the line object number, again, that's in effect the number field that we're used to now. Because it's an account, I'm going to use an account we created earlier, 10220, and I'm going to call that annual membership bill. And the price is going to be, I'm trying to remember, do we have any pricing amount? Okay, so if I go back here, and again, I go over here and I can reference the fields that Kelly had that we connected to in the kind of membership record. So let's put amount in there. Quantity will always be 1. It's just a kind of generic invoice. And that's as much as I need to do. So if I save that, so that's got my, and just shrink those down. And what you might do is, you know, a useful thing you can do is rename them. So it might be, I don't know, do I want to do this? Because you're going to change my, create invoice header. I just want to make sure it wasn't going to break that. And then rename that create invoice line. So make it a bit more user friendly. So when I come back to it, I can understand what's going on. Nice little feature if you're collaborating on Power Automate now is that we have comments. And this has only just come out in Power Automate. And so if you've got more than one person using it, you can kind of set comments against different sections to kind of help understand what you're doing. So do you want to go and process that for me, please, Kelly? So that we can
absolutely
make that work.
Okay, so we're back on our contact record. So we're just going to membership. So the reference number is going to auto-generate. We're going to be really expensive for membership, and we're going to be £100. Start date and end date are optional because we're not actually using them in the flow. And then look for the account is the CD session 2 that we've just created. So in terms of processing information in CRM, that's all you need to do. So we click save and close, and then we go back to our flow, go back to our main header. You did save that, didn't you, Matt? Let's check.
Yeah.
Let's check. Make sure you save it first. Then we go back to our main header, and you can see that's running there. And then we watch this run. So it's created the invoice header, and hopefully any second now. There you go, and it's created our invoice line.
Okay, so if I go over into BC and close that down, go into sales invoices, and here's my invoice at the bottom. So it's pulled in the customer details, about £100 annual membership bill to that general ledger account. So that was really simple to go and create a sales invoice using some of the different system, not particularly hard. Now, what we can also do, I want to exit. If I go back into the flow, what I'm going to do is just edit that and add an extra step. So, new step, Business Central, choose that, do our normal connections stuff. And hang on, get rid of that. I must have done too much there. Create a new one. So I'm going to execute an action. So it's a little bit different to what we did before, rather than just creating data. So Cronus, B2, and my action names. So this is the stuff I can do from outside of BC. So I can post journals, I can post purchase invoices, I can receive an invoice, credits, sales invoices, etc. So what I'm going to do is sales invoice post. And all it's asking me is the ID. And it needs to know what's the ID of this invoice that you just created up here. And I want to choose my create invoice header. That's why it's useful to rename them to something meaningful. So I just want that ID. Click on save. Save again for Kelly's sake. So she's happy that I've saved it. Okay, can you go and do that again for me then, please?
Well, Matt, the nice thing about Flow is that if you come to this test, you can actually go automatically with a recently used trigger and run it again.
Brilliant.
So you don't have to go and process the data again. I mean, in that example, it would have taken me 10 seconds.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's a laborious data processing to get through. So we can just do it that way quickly. And then any moment now, that's going to go green.
First posting in the environment. Yep. Okay.
Yep.
So if I now go into BC, I've still got the same number of invoices because I've created it and I've posted it. So if I go and look at that particular customer, I can see posted sales invoices here, 1. Go and look at that. And there we have our invoice created and posted, all from Power Automate.
Yep, absolutely. Brilliant.
So that's pretty impressive. So yeah, there was a set of standard APIs out there for Business Central. If we're just looking at Business Central, and we can create our own to do pretty well much anything. I was just doing an integration. Yeah, I was just doing an integration before that with a customer, and they were connecting from their website, and because they were taking payment, they were posting general journals, and then creating the orders because they'd already been paid up front for them. So, quite a lot of different functionality that you can put in there, and really it's about thinking what the art of the possible is. Thank you for attending, and hope you enjoy the rest of the sessions this afternoon.